Is up, everybody? What up? So I wanted to make a video about the top 5 builds for 3.17 expansion. So I would like to recommend more builds for this expansion, but unfortunately I feel like there wasn't that many builds. There wasn't that much change, you know, from last league, and people were just comfortable with the builds that they made previous leagues and just wanted to take them on and improve them maybe this league. So that's why we only have 5 top builds. So I know I made an explosive arrow ballista build and it became very popular, so I'm definitely going to recommend my build even though you don't want to hear about it. I know people are hating on it because it's meta, but trust me, 1 month ago when I started playing the build, it most certainly was not meta. Everyone was lol Wing my build. They were saying, why are you playing explosive arrow ballista? Don't you know ignites suck, lol W? But I mean, now everyone likes it, so whatever. Anyways, rambling over. If you like the video, please like the video. If you want to watch more on Twitch, come to the Twitch. Otherwise, click the link below in the description with all the build links are just going to be there. If you don't want to listen to the rest of the video, I'm just going to go through the pros, the cons of every build. And that is extremely subjective. That is just what I think. So yeah, don't make me change your opinion or your decision. Just make that up on your own. Look at all the videos, cross-reference, decide what you want to play. And what's most important is play what's most fun. These are going to be the easiest builds to start, but easy does not mean fun. A lot of the time in Path of Exile, you give up fun for efficiency. And part of the reason why we call them league start builds is because they all do that to some extent. Aside for explosive arrow ballista, that build's sick. But yeah, anyways, let's go. The first build, what do you know? Explosive arrow ballista elementalist. But you can also play Champ and Heirophant. Champ and Heirophant version was made by SciTV and Zizarin, so definitely check out their variant of that as well. It's just the same thing with maybe half the damage, but twice the tanky, right? So because we in softcore, I mean my build specifically for softcore, it doesn't mean that it's squishy. It's not squishy at all. It's very tanky versus hits, slightly squishy versus dots, because I don't really generally build for dots, but it's still pretty good, right? Like except the Champ and Heirophant version, they have a lot better sustain in that regard. So yeah, so the first plus, it's very easy to gear. You don't need almost anything to get this build off the ground. The best in slot belt is a Deity and Dawn, which is a T3 unique, very easy. It drops all the time. In 1 week in my SSF, I had 3 of them or 4 of them, and I just corrupted them, you know, just to get a cool implicit instead of the strength. Strength is a good implicit. This belt gives you 30% more damage, gives you 2 reses, gives you strength, and gives you life. It's just so good. Such a good belt. Aside for that, you can just use a Storm Cloud, you can use a Quill Rain, you can use a Thicket Bow. Anything you need to get your attack speed to above 2.5, you know, it's going to be good. Yes, you do have to hit certain thresholds to be at the optimal level of damage, but you don't necessarily need to do that from day 1. You can just progress your way there, as it is with any build. The more attention to detail, the better your build is. It's very good damage for the price. So with the buff that we're getting, a 44% damage multiplier in 3.17, we're going to be getting a lot of damage for cheaper. Even you can do Maven on a Storm Cloud, Tempest, whatever the bow we're going to be getting is. It's really easy to get this build off the ground. Has good single target and has decent map clear because of Prolif. I'm mainly made this map, this build for map clear, although it excelled at single target as well because of the way that fuses stacks. So yeah, it has very high uptime in DPS since it's a dot. So what that means is that because we're just putting our ballistas down and it's applying a damage over time effect for 4 seconds, which is our ignite duration, which by the way you can get that up to 8 seconds or 10 seconds if you have the helmet focus craft. That means that we are dealing damage for that portion of time regardless of anything that happens, and we have to maybe get our ballistas down and make sure that we're getting another 20 fuse explosion within those 10 seconds. So uptime in DPS, unlike builds like hit builds, is very, very good. The advertised damage for hit builds pretty much requires you to be hitting that target for that specific amount of time, so it doesn't have that issue. And it's tanky versus hits, it has 40,000 evasion, 30,000 armor, Grace Determination, Defiance Banner. you know, it's very resilient in that regard. 5% of damage taken is given to our totems instead of us. Our totems can also taunt, so while we're mapping, nothing is actually targeting us, it's targeting our totems. Mind you, that can be a little bit risky if you're doing like Shaper or something like that, because maybe he slams your totem and you don't realize, but yeah, just keep that in mind. So the minuses would be totem playstyle. I've seen a lot of people say they don't like totem playstyle. You know, that's just the way it is. Totem playstyle. So yeah, if you don't like it, don't play it. It's a popular build now, right? It wasn't a month ago when I started making it, but now it's a popular build. So if you want to be a hipster like I was when I started making the build, don't play it. But that hasn't discouraged me because I believe in the build. I think it's pretty good. And I think it's a lot of fun. I'm going to continue with it. So I'm going to start with that, yeah, of course. And the recovery is not insane. You can get pretty good recovery if you invest into it. But I personally, as a softcore player, prefer to sort of have 1 or 2 pitfalls. Like, yeah, okay, I'm not tanky against dots, and I don't have insane recovery, but that's okay because I'm not gonna die like once in 100 maps or whatever. Like, it's not gonna be that big of an issue, you know. I can afford to die once in 100 maps. It's fine. I'm still gonna be able to take my build to level 100 as long as I'm not doing stupidly hard content, and I'm happy with that. And overall, I would give it an 8 out of 10 rating. Very much would recommend. The second build I want to recommend is the Fizz.dot Corrupting Fever Champ or Glad. So this build is a clear speed king. It has insane clear. It's very tanky, easy to gear, and scales well into endgame. And as a free explodey, if you're Glad, right, which you get through your Ascendancy, and if you're a champion, you're gonna have to get it through Hemophilia, which is the gloves that give you explosion if you've bled, right? And it has very good damage uptime because, like the other build, the dot build, so as long as you've, you know, kept up with your Stormbrand or whatever on the target, it's gonna have a good damage uptime and it's gonna deal its damage throughout its duration. So that's completely fine. I think it's a really good build. I was practicing it a lot last league before the league started. It was SSF friendly, although it does have quite a few downsides. The single target, honestly, until you get in your Empower, the single target sucks. It has no true 6-link. The problem with this is that you are pigeonholed into getting an Empower. You're lucky that Explosive Arrow doesn't need Empower, because otherwise this Empower gem would be extremely expensive. But Empower, with it being as rare as it is now, it's still going to be very expensive. So you got to keep that in mind, that for your single target damage, you're going to need an Empower at level 3+. It can be expensive into the late game for not so huge damage upgrades. This build goes up to like 12 million damage single target. It can go further, sure, but it's not like other builds where maybe you put 10x into it and you get like 5 million damage. No, this build gets incrementally better and better, but it's very well rounded in that regard because it has very good defense, the damage is good, and it has good damage uptime, and you can sort of stay at the bosses for longer without dying because of being tanky. So yeah, it needs level plus. So what that means is that you're gonna need Amulet with plus levels, you're gonna need a chest with plus levels. It does not have a true 6-link, as I said, outside of Empower. And this might be a downside for some people, but it can feel a little clunky enabling your Corrupting Fever sometimes. If you don't have the Amulet craft where it says does not consume life or mana while focused, it can be pretty bad if you don't have enough life to actually reserve it. And if you let the Corrupting Fever buff drop, it's going to be a problem. So for League Start, I would give it a 9 out of 10 clear, which is the highest rating we have for clear. 4 out of 10 for single target. That single target though can go up to a 7 with investment, so I wouldn't worry too much. If you just want to clear maps, this is the clear choice. This is just a clear choice. This is the best clearing map there is currently as a League Start. So yeah, that is something I do recommend. The next is the Poison Lightning Strike build. So this build, it can be leveled with Helix or it can be leveled with Poison Concoction. It's really easy to get started, as it is with many poison builds. You just click the poison nodes and you have enough damage to already pretty much play up to red maps, right? Like, it's pretty fast, it's easier to get started and a lot more bearable than playing Helix in late game, right? But you're gonna have to play Helix at some point if you actually want to start playing the build, because Lightning Strike actually needs a dagger from Heist to with the implicit of all damage poisons, right? So what that means is that you're going to have to play Helix at one point or another, or you're going to have to play Poison Concoction until you can afford that dagger. So yeah, it scales really well into endgame, as it is with any Poison build. It hits a lot, right? You're going to get double hits with Lightning Strike, as good clear, tanky versus hit, as high on hit recovery as well as avoidance because of Nightblade. So Nightblade, Perfect Agony, Poison, all of that stuff, you know, you're going to be pretty tanky. Although, as it is with many softcore builds, vulnerable versus dots is a downside. And this could be a thing that you might think is a downside. It's Poison build. I personally, you know, I think Poison builds are fine, but many people don't like Poison builds, so they have that ramp time. So you look at the damage that they advertise, it's like 10 million damage, right? Then you look at the poison duration, and it's like a poison duration of 10 seconds. So what that means is that to actually get to 10 million damage, you have to be ramping for 10 seconds non-stop, and then you have to maintain that. So standing still, hitting the target for 10 seconds non-stop to actually get the advertised number of damage. But it doesn't really matter. I digress, because it's still a good build. I do recommend it. It's an 8 out of 10. It's pretty fast. It's tanky. Yeah, that's the Poison Lightning Striker. And then, since we're on the trend of Poison, we talk about Poison Concoction. This is the most beginner-friendly, easy build to start. You get this skill gem at level 12, and then you just beat the whole game with it, dude. It's that easy. You don't need a weapon. You don't have to worry about ever crafting an insanely difficult weapon. Everything else is just generic dot multi life res build. Like, it's so easy to play this build. So this is the new Toxic Rain. This is it. So it's the most beginner friendly build, extremely easy to get off the ground, does not need expensive weapons. Plague Bearer clear, so that's going to be really nice for your clear. You know, just popping that poison righteous fire, running around, everything dies. You can play it as a cultist. You can also play it as a Pathfinder. Pathfinder has better single target and scalability into endgame. Occultist has better clear, because obviously, you know, getting that profane boom booms is, you know, satisfying. And it's decently tanky, has good recovery, does very well versus hits, gets insane amount of chaos resistance for free because of all the chaos clusters that it pops, that it takes on the tree. That's pretty much it. The thing about this build is that the Jack of all trades, master of none. It's not the best at anything, but it's good at everything. Doesn't have the best clear, doesn't have the best single target, but it just does everything pretty decently well, right? There's always gonna be, you know, pluses and minuses in PoE when it comes to builds. It doesn't have insane scaling, so one of the benefits of it not having a weapon is that you don't have to craft a weapon. But also one of the downsides of not having a weapon is that weapons give insane amount of damage, right? Poison Concoction gets its damage through its flask, but the flask is never going to give you as much damage as a weapon can give you into endgame. So it has that sort of issue with scalability. This doesn't mean that it's bad, you know. Everything I said up to this point is valid, so yeah. Just keep that in mind. It doesn't have insane scalability. Also, one thing that I personally don't like too much about it is that it's a lobbed ground targeting projectile. So you're going to have to sort of make sure that you hit and you shotgun with your projectiles, and there's going to be this sort of delay as you throw the projectiles, and it's not sort of like a bow build where the projectiles are going out and clearing everything in front of you. It's just going to be a targeted area on the ground. If you get used to that, it's completely fine, and I wouldn't worry about it. And again, as we talked about in the Lightning Strike portion of the video, it's a poison build, slow stacking, single target damage. So yeah, that is up to you if you want to play that build. I think it's good. I recommend it. It's a 7 out of 10 for that one. Then we got a Seismic Trap Saboteur. So this is a tried and true build. It's the build that won the Gauntlet. It's the build that people still are going to be playing in the Gauntlet. So it's something that I can recommend. Single target is good, and it will still be good. Surely it'll still be good. It's tanky. You know, it won the Gauntlet. You can't have better than that, right? If it won the Gauntlet, it has to be good. Has decent clear with Exsanguinate Traps. Exsanguinate Traps didn't get nerfed at all. Exsanguinate got a big buff, although because you have to put it in a trap, it's going to be sort of like offsetting that. But it didn't get buffed, it didn't get nerfed, so it's still good, right? It's still very, very good. It can do everything in the game with Alcan-Go gear. So even though it got nerfed, it's still going to be able to completely demolish everything. It's not a problem at all. It's SSF friendly, Alcan-Go gear, pick stuff off of the ground, alk it, put it on, kill everything. Has good scaling as well, gem level scaling, as well as a lot of other scalings that you can get on both weapons, amulets, influence gear, all that stuff is really, really good. And also trap scaling, you know, trap throwing speed, all of this stuff is good. The downsides, I would say that, you know, traps, not everyone likes traps. Obviously, this is subjective. I personally don't like traps. I think the animation is too long for throwing traps, and getting the trap throwing speed is a little bit difficult. It's not quite as good as playing a miner, but obviously this build is so much better than any other miner build currently. Has a lot of buttons actually to maximize the DPS. I actually miswrote that. So it has a few buttons to maximize DPS. I think that's what I meant there, yeah. So you're gonna have to first apply Bear Trap, and then you're gonna have to throw your Seismic Trap, then you have to Storm Brand, but that's about it, right? Like that's all you gotta really do. It's not that much of a downside. I was actually struggling to find downsides aside for it being traps. Yeah, it might be a little risky because the nerfs to Seismic Trap, but everyone who has played Seismic Trap in the past has reassured me that the AoE nerfs don't really mean much. They were never really actually truly scaling AoE. The overlaps weren't that big of a deal. You're still gonna deal insane damage per trap. Surely it's gonna be fine, right? Like, it's gonna be fine. And if it doesn't work, you know, you can play any other trap, but obviously this would not be ideal. But there is many other traps that you can play. I know people are playing with Ice Trap. I know people are playing with Lightning Trap. You know, there's Lightning Spire Trap for single target, all of this stuff. So, but as it stands, this build is an 8 out of 10. Would highly recommend. It's a very good build. And yeah, I'll link to all the POBs and the YouTube guides in this URL, so you can find that in the comments. Thank you very much. Hope you have a good league start, and I hope you enjoy these builds. Make sure to smash that like button. Yo, thank you, boys. Bye.